Tadekam smaramas-tadekam hajamaha, tadekam jagat sakshi rupam namamaha, sadekam nidhanam niralambamisham bhavam bodhipotam sharanyam rajamaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. On that alone do we meditate. That alone do we worship. To that alone, the witness of the universe, do we bow. To that one who is our sole eternal support, the self-existent Lord, the raft to safety across the ocean of this world, do we come for refuge. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning to all my good friends, old and new, and some of whom I have not yet met, but I'm very happy to be here on this beautiful Sunday morning. Our topic today is the power of the holy name. And actually what I want to talk about is this prayer that we just recited. And it's timely because who composed this prayer, who wrote these verses, was Shri Chaitanya, the great preacher of devotion of Bengal, India, of the 15th century, late 15th, early 16th century. And his birthday was on Friday. So he's on my mind because we just celebrated his birthday. And this is really a remarkable discussion, as it were, of teaching about the power of the name of God, the name of the divine. Just a little bit about this remarkable teacher, Sri Chaitanya. He was born in a small place, Mayapur, in the district of Nadia in West Bengal in 1486. And his given name was Vishwambhar Misra, but nobody knows him by that name. He became a very famous Sanskrit scholar, a Sanskrit Pandit. By the age of 16, he had his own school that he was leading, and he was a feared disputant. The other logic choppers of the area were terrified of him because he would win all the debates, and established himself. And then he went on a pilgrimage and got initiated at age 17. He got initiated into the holy name of Krishna. And it completely revolutionized his life. And he became a devotee of the Lord. Rather than being a logic chopper, he became a devotee. And he gave up all that scholarship. He gave up his school. And he went around practicing and preaching the chanting of the name of God. And they would chant in groups also, singing and dancing in the streets. The present-day Hare Krishnas are one branch of the descendants of Sri Chaitanya. So at age 24, he was initiated into sannyasa. He became a Swami, he became a monk, and moved to the holy city of Puri on the east coast of India, and he lived there the rest of his life. At age 48, he disappeared, and nobody knows what happened to him, whether he entered the ocean, or some people say he merged into the image of Krishna in the temple. But his legacy is tremendous. And I'd like to reflect today on some of these beautiful teachings, these powerful teachings, and the tremendous power of the holy name, the name of God. To purify us, to open our hearts, to bring us to direct experience of the divine, which is our aim and purpose of life. So this first verse, which is, this translation is by Swami Prabhupada, the founder of our center, and I think he worked with Christopher Isherwood on this, and it's a beautiful translation. I'd like to chant the Sanskrit just for to remind us that it came from this beautiful Sanskrit language. Cheto darpanam arjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam Shriyah kairava chandrika vitaranam vidyavadhu jivanam Anandam buddhi vardhanam pratipadam purnamrita swadanam sarvatmasnapanam param vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. So he gives us some really potent imagery here, which I'd like to unpack a little, as they say. Actually, the translation starts with chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly. In this verse, that comes at the end of the verse. Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam, all glory to the name, to the chanting of the name of Krishna. Of course, we know that though the names are various, the power is the same. So the first image he gives us is of the heart as a mirror. And our heart is a mirror where we see the reflection of the divine. If we can look down in our heart, there we can see the reflection of the divine. But that mirror is covered with dust. Have you ever seen an old mirror maybe stored up in the attic for 50 years or something, and it's covered with dust, and if you look in it, you can't see your face. You see a faint outline maybe. You can hardly see anything. And it's been there so long that you can't just wipe it off with your hand. You actually need to go get some detergent and really scrub it to get all that dirt off. So this is our condition as well. Our hearts, the mirror of our hearts is covered with dust. And we need to polish it, as it were. So that's this first idea, that Chetaha, this heart has to be, this mirror of the heart has to be polished. So as the translation goes, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean. And what happens when the mirror of the heart is wiped clean? In the words of Jesus, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. It's the same teaching. Sri Ramakrishna says, if a mirror is covered with dirt, it won't reflect one's face. One cannot realize one's true self unless one's heart is pure. And Vivekananda also says this purity of heart brings the vision of God. He says the pure heart is the best mirror for the reflection of truth. So, all these disciplines are for the purification of the heart. All the spiritual disciplines we may undergo ultimately are for this purpose, to purify our hearts. So that to wipe that mirror clean so that we can see the reflection of the divine, see the reflection of our true self. And as soon as it is pure, says Vivekananda, all truths flash upon it in a minute. And he reminds us, our efforts take off the dust. The mirror does not change. So the mirror is here. Actually, our true self is always one with the divine. The divine is shining deep within, but we don't see it. Why? We don't realize it. Why? Because of this layer of dust. And what is this dust? Sri Krishna's intimate friend and disciple Arjuna asks Sri Krishna a relevant question. He says, Lord, why do we do things that we don't really want to do? We know they're bad, we don't want to do them, but we do them anyway. Why? Why is that? Why do we do wicked or selfish or unhelpful actions? Why do we do those things? And Sri Krishna says, actually, there's two things that make us do those. It's kama and krodha, lust and anger, desire and anger. These are the root of all our troubles. This is the dust, or maybe in some of us, it's more like a thick layer of mud on the heart, you know? So it might take more than a little wiping. It might take like a power wash to get it off there. Well, the good news is the name of God is a power washer. It's a power washer, and it clears that dust off the mirror. So Sri Krishna calls this this unappeasable fire of desire as our difficulty, and that is the layer of mud that is on the mirror of our heart. Or as Vivekananda puts it, ignorance and wickedness are the dirt and dust that are on the mirror of our hearts. So how does chanting the name, the holy name, how does chanting a mantra, how does chanting the name of God purify the heart? It drives out the impurity. How does it do that? What really is another way of understanding the impurities of our mind is through the idea of samskaras. These are the tendencies we have in our minds. And they're like, a good example is like ruts on an old wagon road, or old dirt road. A wagon would go across on the road in the rain, and it would leave wagon ruts. And then the sun comes out and the mud dries into very hard dirt. But those ruts are still there. And the next wagon comes along, and the wheels of that next wagon fall into those same ruts. And it's very difficult to get the wagon to go out of those ruts. So our thoughts are like those wagons. And our mind is like that once muddy road with certain ruts that are embedded in it. And so all the thoughts like to go on those same old ruts of anger, of greed, of jealousy. So what chanting the divine name does is it makes a new rut, a different rut for the mind to go in. So the mind, rather than going on those old unhelpful paths, it starts to go on the new paths. So this is one way of understanding how chanting the divine name purifies our minds. Because the thoughts which come will be new thoughts. They'll be thoughts of purity, thoughts of holiness. Then again, the name itself is purity. The holy name is purity itself. And why is that? Because the name is not different from the named. There is an eternal and inseparable connection between the name of the divine and the divine. So when we're chanting the name, we are invoking the presence of the divine, which is utterly pure and infinite and eternal here in our hearts. Now the next phrase, which is connected here, we have a second image that Chaitanya gives us of a mighty forest fire raging within us. And the name extinguishes, chanting the name, repeating the name of God extinguishes that fire. Like a rain, perhaps, a rain falling on that fire, and it quenches the flames, cools it down. What is this fire? Again, actually, this is the Gita quote probably is more apropos here, because Sri Krishna calls this desire the unappeasable fire of desire. Now, what's wrong with desire? It's natural, isn't it? Nothing wrong with it exactly. It's perfectly normal, and actually desires give us a lot of happiness. I want something. Maybe I want a new car, and I save up for it, and I'm really looking for it, and I want that particular color, the lime green Lamborghini, right? And finally I save up enough and I get that car, and I'm so happy. So fulfilling desires brings us joy for a little while. For a little while. And then what happens? I managed to run into a pickup truck with that Lamborghini and mess up the whole front end, and it's all bent up, and I'm suffering now. I'm suffering. And gradually I get used to that car, and now it's just my car, and now it's 10 years old, and it's just my old clunker, and now I want a new car. So that's the way desire works. We know this is how desire works. And there's always another desire ready to crop up. There's this beautiful term that's used to describe the state of attaining the divine, and it's called Purna Kamaha. All desires, all kamahas are purnaha, are completely filled, are completely fulfilled, as it were. And we can say, well, how? I have so many desires. To get all of them fulfilled, that would be wonderful. Well, it's not like that. It's not like they get individually fulfilled. Rather, they get stilled, because we attain that infinite fullness, which is the divine, which completely satisfies us. It brings us unending peace and joy. And we don't need anything external to ourselves to feel that peace and joy. That's the very nature of the divine. And when we touch God, all other desires are completely laid to rest. They're stilled. And what a peace comes to us when we're no longer tormented by this fire of desire. And the very joy of our own being, the very joy of God wells up within us. That's Purna Kamaha. So as we repeat the divine name, we're invoking the presence of the divine, of that ever full existence within us, and that fire begins to die down. And we start to taste some real joy, some real peace. Actually, all desires but when we strive to satisfy a desire, we're trying to attain peace. We're actually trying to attain the divine. All desire is misguided or misdirected desire for God, because it's always desire for fulfillment. So that's why Shri Ramakrishna sometimes says, can you turn your desires to God? If you feel greedy, be greedy for God. If you feel lustful, feel that desire to commune with the divine. If we can turn all our desires to the divine, divine is easy to reach. So, like rain, the name falls on the heart that's burning with desire and extinguishes those flames. The name brings with it the named, and in the presence of the named, the fire of desire is stilled, and we attain that fulfillment. So here he's given us in the first line 2 beautiful images of the heart as a mirror, and of the divine, and chanting the name as polishing that mirror, and chanting the name as a gentle rain which extinguishes the fire burning within us. He's not done, though. He's going to give us some more beautiful images. I'd just like to maybe address this, that some people may doubt. Just the name of God? What's so powerful about that? It's just a word, actually. What's so powerful about that? Actually, there was a story that Sri Ramakrishna told that a man wanted to go from Sri Lanka to India, and there's a fairly small bit of ocean or sea between Sri Lanka and India. And Vibhishana, the good brother, Ravana's good brother, who became the king, he said, no problem. And what he did is he wrote the name of Rama on a leaf. Just the name of Rama, he wrote it on a leaf, and he tied that leaf in the corner of his dhoti, the corner of his wearing cloth, and he said, no problem, just have faith, you'll be able to walk across the water. But don't look at what I've tied in your cloth. If you doubt, you'll sink. And so the man with great joy and faith, he began walking on the water and thinking, how wonderful. And he was well on his way when he started wondering, what is this wonderful thing which Vibhishana has tied in the corner of my cloth? What is that power that lets me walk across the water? So he reaches down, he unties the knot in his cloth, and he looks and he says, what? Just this? Just the name of Rama? And then he sank. He'd lost the faith in it. Swami Vivekananda points, he makes a good case for the power of words in general. He says, sound symbols play a prominent part in the drama of human life. I am talking to you. I am not touching you. The pulsations of the air caused by my speaking to you are going into your ear. They touch your nerves and produce effects in your minds. You cannot resist this. What can be more wonderful than this, he asks. What can be more wonderful than this? One man calls another a fool, and at this, the other stands up and clenches his fist and lands a blow on his nose. Look at the power of the word. A word can lead to a blow on the nose. A word can lead to a war. And we think words are not powerful. There is a woman weeping, he says, and miserable. Another woman comes along and speaks to her a few gentle words. The doubled up frame of the weeping woman becomes straightened at once. Her sorrow is gone and she already begins to smile. Think of the power of words. So this is the power of words in general. And Vivekananda explains that we mostly use this force, this power of words, unconsciously. And he asks us to know the nature of this force and to use it well, to use it consciously. So when we chant the holy name, the divine name, knowing the named and the name and the named to be one, then we are starting to do that. We are using it consciously. There's a whole branch of Indian linguistics dealing with the relation between a word and its meaning, and I'm not going to get into that here deeply, but they note the deep connection between the name of something and the thing itself, the thing named. If we hear a word, say the old story of don't think of a white elephant. Can you do it? I've just said the word white elephant, and everybody's mind has arisen an image of a white elephant. How can you not think of a white elephant? So Vivekananda points out that this is the connection between the name and the named, between God's name and God, is unbreakable. He says, never there was an idea without a corresponding word, or a word without a corresponding idea. Ideas and words are in their nature inseparable. So this is what he calls nama rupa, the name and the form. And then, which name are we? Am I talking about? I had given a talk along similar lines many years ago, and I just was checking this morning. There was a comment on the YouTube and said, it's so frustrating. He never tells us which name. What do I chant? That's a good question. What do we chant? Sri Chaitanya himself tells us, I'll just skip ahead to the second verse for a moment, where he says, various are thy names, O Lord. In each and every name thy power resides. So there we have the answer, actually. It doesn't matter which name appeals to you. That's one of the wonderful teachings of Vedanta, that we have, each of us, our own unique path to the divine and our own unique conception of God. It's not that you should accept my idea of God. You will have your own idea. And gradually, as we get closer and closer, as our realization deepens, we can gradually begin to understand the real nature of the divine. But until then, we have the name, and maybe someone likes to think of God as Divine Mother, someone as Krishna, someone as Rama, someone as Jesus, someone as Allah, someone as the infinite formless reality, with the name Om, Why not? Various are the names. Shri Chaitanya tells us this, and our Rig Veda also tells us this, that truth is one. That which exists, that infinite reality, is one. The sages, the different wise people, the different seekers, call it variously, have different various names for it. So that's something to remember. And let me just insert here also that it is helpful, however, to stick with one. Yes, the divine power is in all of them, but we stick with one and follow that to its source. And in that regard, it may be helpful to seek a teacher who can guide us, who can tell us, well, for you, this name is best. You repeat this name. That's called initiation. So let's return now to the first verse of the Shikshashtakam, the 8 verses of instruction, which incidentally, Sri Chaitanya never sat down and wrote these as, I'm going to write these teachings down. They were verses that he uttered at different times, and they were collected by the disciples and put into these 8 instructions, eight verses of instruction. So now he gives us an exquisite image of a lotus. What lotus? Of course, the lotus of the heart. But he uses this term. It's a kairava, which is a certain kind of lotus, a white lotus which blooms only at the moonrise. It blooms only in moonlight. Most lotuses, they open when the sun comes out, they open up, and the sun goes down, they close. This is a different kind of lotus. When the moon comes up, this lotus opens. So Chaitanya is likening chanting of the name to moonlight falling on that lotus. That lotus it calls it the Shreya Kairava. Shreya means that supreme blessedness. So the lotus of supreme blessedness, which is found deep within us, the lotus of our heart, that opens in the moonlight of the divine name falling on it. So this translation is so beautiful. He's turned it into a prayer. O name, stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. The lotus is a very common image in Hinduism. They have dozens of different words for the lotus in Sanskrit. There's Padma, Kamala, Pankaja, Saroja, Pundarikam, Utpalam, Nalini, etc., etc. So the interesting thing about a lotus, if you've seen a lotus bud, it's not ugly, but there's nothing special about it. It's just a big bud. But when it opens, what a beauty. How amazing. It's just an exquisite flower. So similarly, our hearts are like that. Perhaps like a closed lotus, or it may be beginning to open, but they haven't fully burst into blossom yet. So our work in spiritual life, in one sense, we talked about the purifying the heart, but another way of looking at it is opening the lotus of our heart, finding our true heart, finding our spiritual heart deep within us. It's the heart is really where it's at in spiritual life. And of course, when we talk about the heart, I'm not talking about the physical heart, that organ of muscle in the left part of the chest, but it's a more subtle heart. We call it the spiritual heart, which is, one really has to find it oneself, deep within us, typically somewhere in the center of the chest, and close by the emotional heart. The emotional heart is the clue. To follow the emotional heart, we reach the spiritual heart. The emotional heart, where we feel strong emotions like love or heartbreak. We feel those deep within us. So this heart is the contact point between us as individuals, individual souls, and the divine. The heart is where spiritual experience first unfolds, where the personal, our personal deity, our God is enshrined here. And so the struggle for higher consciousness, the struggle in spiritual life, is really a struggle to open the heart, to bring that heart lotus into blossom. And therefore, we are also instructed to meditate here in the heart. So this image is so compelling because Sri Chaitanya likens the name of God to that moonlight which will open this heart as we repeat it. And typically the instruction is to repeat it, but to feel it, to repeat it actually within the heart. We start with the repetition out loud, perhaps, fully expressing it. And then gradually it becomes quiet. So maybe just our lips are moving a little bit. And then we're asked to even let that subside so that it's just being recited in the heart. And then the heart begins to open. And then there's an interesting line in this. I just want to mention that in this Sanskrit verse where he calls this, he says, the name is the life of the bride of knowledge. And it's not exactly translated here. It's actually, Prabhupada has translated it as opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. But there's something very appealing also about this idea of the name, that knowledge, our knowledge, even to know God, is incomplete. It's like a bride without her groom. The wedding can't take place till the groom arrives, and then the bride and the groom are united in love. And so here the bride is likened to knowledge, but she is incomplete until love comes in the picture, until the name comes and enlivens that knowledge with the sweetness of the communion with the divine. So it is really the name which can bring us true knowledge and even union with the divine, opening the cup of our heart to the knowledge of the divine in love. So this is the next powerful image Sri Chaitanya gives us. And he keeps going. Next he says, Anandam Buddhi Varudhanam. There is an ocean of bliss, and the name increases that ocean, makes it grow even bigger. Where is that ocean of bliss? Actually, it's within us. It's in our hearts. When we perform the worship service here in our shrine every day, and at all of our temples, when we perform that worship service, before we lay some flowers and offer incense and light and food before the altar, we do all of that mentally. And at the beginning of that practice, we are asked to envision an ocean of nectar in our hearts. So it's actually there. And chanting the name grows that ocean. Prabhupada translates it like this: drown deep in the waves of its bliss. O self, drown deep in the waves of his bliss. So that idea that there is bliss. It's an ocean of bliss. We can drown in it. Nothing bad will happen. We won't drown, actually. As we drown in that ocean of bliss, we attain amrita, immortality. Sri Ramakrishna often used to mention a story. He was asking Narendra, his disciple, the future Swami Vivekananda. He asked him, just imagine there is some syrup in a cup and that you have become a fly. Now tell me, where will you sit to drink that syrup? And Narendra answers, I'll sit on the edge of the cup. If I dive into the syrup, I'll drown. I'll just sit on the edge and stretch out my neck to drink the syrup. And then Sri Ramakrishna says, then I told Narendra, but my child, this is the ocean of Satchit Ananda. This is the ocean of existence, consciousness, bliss, absolute. There is no fear of death in it. This is the ocean of immortality. And then Chaitanya goes on, at every step, pratipadam, purnamrita swadanam, taste that nectar. At every step, taste that nectar which is all fulfilling. Sri Ramakrishna used to sing a song by Ram Prasad, the great poet, mystic of Bengal, who was the devotee of Mother Kali. And he used to sing, one of the songs is, I drink no ordinary wine, but wine of everlasting bliss, as I repeat my Mother Kali's name. It so intoxicates my mind that people take me to be drunk. Yes, Sri Ramakrishna would sometimes use the simile of intoxication with liquor or drugs to describe the intoxication one feels in divine communion. Because one loses, in the deep divine communion, one loses one's sense of this external world and becomes merged in an ocean of bliss, tasting a nectar which cannot be described, which brings complete fulfillment. And so this is what Sri Chaitanya is talking about. This is what the Ramakrishna talks about. All the great teachers come back to this joy, this true peace and true joy of knowing the divine. So tasting is nectar at every step. With every repetition, we get a drop of nectar. It reminds me of, there's another verse that we sing in Hollywood. We sing the Ram Nam. Perhaps some of you have joined us for that, where we sing the names of Rama together. And there's a verse which says, blessed, blessed are those fortunate ones who drink ever the nectar of the name of Rama. Shri Rama Nam Amritam, the nectar, the Amrita of Ram Nam, of the name of Rama. So the name truly becomes like nectar. This is one of Sri Chaitanya's essential teachings, aside from these 8 verses of instruction, so-called. One of his essential teachings can be boiled down to 3. Have compassion for other beings, get a taste for the divine name, and serve the devotees of God. Jive Daya, Name Ruchi, and Vaishnava Seva. And this second point, this taste, Ruchi is the Bengali term, Name Ruchi, have a taste for the name. Does it taste sweet to you? When you can get a taste for the sweetness of God's name, you have taken a big step forward in spiritual life. We need to get a taste for the name. We need to get this feeling of joy when repeating the name. Somebody asked Sri Ramakrishna, how do I get that? How can I take delight in the name of God? And he says, pray for that. Pray with a yearning heart that you may take delight in his name. And he used to say, if a typhoid patient has lost all taste for food, there's very little hope of recovery for that patient. But if even just a little taste remains, like, okay, I can eat a little something, then his life need not be despaired of. There's still hope. So like that, if we don't have a single bit of taste for God's name, it's not a good sign. But if even a little bit, we can get a little bit. But then he also gives this example. This is a common example. When we have jaundice, I haven't had jaundice, but I've asked people who have had it and they verify this is true. If we have jaundice, sugar tastes bitter. Something about the chemistry of the disease, that sugar actually tastes bitter. But part of the treatment for jaundice, at least the old treatment, I'm sure now they have strong drugs for it, but part of the treatment was to eat sugar, even though it tastes bitter. You take it in little bits, you keep tasting it, you keep tasting it. Gradually, if you keep tasting the sugar, it starts tasting sweet. So like that is the holy name. At first, it may be a drudgery. We're asked to repeat the holy name 100 times, 108 times. Oh, that's a lot. It's kind of drudgery. But as we go on doing that, it starts to taste sweet. And pretty soon, 1,008 is not much. It's like, I've already done 10 rounds on my mala, on my beads. I want to do more. So that's, if we can once taste the sweetness, then we want to keep tasting it. Like a drug, we want to keep taking that taste. We don't want to give it up. Now, this is another beautiful image. At every step, tasting it at every step. When we take a walk, one of the powerful things we can do when walking is to repeat our mantra while walking, to repeat the divine name while walking. Sometimes I've been on hikes in nature, beautiful hikes in nature with people who they're just, they're not really seekers. And they go on yakking about this and that and the other and my job and did you hear about so-and-so and what happened? And where's the joy? You're in beautiful nature. It's quiet. You can just shut up a little bit and repeat that name. Repeat that beautiful name inside. And the joy starts to arise. It's a very powerful practice. All right, we have one more image. How many more? We've had the heart as a mirror and the name is polishing it. We've had the fire of desire and the name is extinguishing it. We've had the lotus of the heart opening in the moonlight of the holy name. We've had the holy name as the groom, so uniting with the bride of knowledge to bring union with the divine. We've had swelling that ocean of bliss, and at every step tasting the nectar. And one more he gives us. Sarvatma snapanam. The bath. It's a bath for weary souls. A supreme bath actually for all souls. Sarvatma. Sarva, all. Atma, all souls. Snapanam, a bath. It's like taking a bath. Sri Ramakrishna puts it this way. Knowingly or unknowingly, in whatever state we utter God's name, we acquire merit. As one who voluntarily goes to a river and bathes in it gets the benefit of the bath, so too does one who has been pushed into the water by another. Or one who, when sleeping soundly, has water thrown upon him. So we take this bath. And there's another example that he gives of elephants. And elephants, the sort of tamed elephants were still used in some parts of India as workers. And so they're kept in a stable. And usually they're released for half the year to wander in the forest, and then they're sort of enslaved for half the year to work and lumber cutting trees and whatever. So, but they love to bathe, and they'll go into a lake or a river and bathe and with their trunk, they'll make a shower, right, with the trunk and spray water and get all nice and clean. And then as soon as they come out of the bath, what do? They roll around in the mud and the dust and cover their bodies with dust. Why? Well, it's because I think that acts as a deterrent for insects and things like that. But Sri Ramakrishna points that out and he says, but if you take the elephant to the stable immediately after its bath, then it remains clean. And what he's talking about here actually is the final moments of our life, when we leave the body behind. And it's considered very auspicious to leave the body while thinking of God, while chanting the name of God, while chanting that holy name. It has tremendous power to influence our trajectory after leaving the body, it is said. If we are where our minds are at the time of leaving the body, there we go. So if we want to go to God, we chant the name of God. But it's difficult to do at the moment of death if we haven't practiced it. So that is the idea. We practice, and it's like just think at the end of the day, we take a bath, perhaps as particularly those who work in physical labor. You take your shower, maybe you take a shower at the beginning of the day, but you definitely take one at the end of the day if you've been digging ditches or working carpentry or anything, getting all sweaty and dusty. First thing you do when you get home, you take a bath, you take a shower. And like that, at the end of the day, when we come back from our activities of the day, we can enter our closet, we can enter our little shrine area, or find a quiet spot and take a mental bath also, a bath in the holy name. And feel the stresses of the day wash off and feel that we're immersing ourselves back in that peace of the divine. So And then, at the end of life, we take that last bath and kick off this frame and enter into union with the divine. So this is how this first verse, and we don't think we really have time to get much into the rest of the verses of this beautiful text, but he describes, of course, let me touch on one that's actually not included in the translation. What happens when we go on chanting the name and we start to get that intoxication and we start to taste that longing for God that arises? Then we get this verse, which is the 6th verse, which has been left off of this translation we read, which goes, "Ah, how I long for the day when in chanting thy name, the tears will spill down from my eyes, and my throat will refuse to utter its prayers, choking and stammering with ecstasy, when all the hairs of my body will stand on end with joy." So here, Sri Chaitanya is giving us a hint of the kind of joy that we experience in divine communion. When we start to get intoxicated with the name, the tears flow from the eyes. Interesting point, Sri Ramakrishna says that tears of grief come from the inner corners of the eye. Tears of joy, spiritual joy, come from the outer corners of the eyes. And the recorder of the Gospel, Sri Ramakrishna, notices sometimes that there would be teardrops in the outer corners of Sri Ramakrishna's eyes. And I have seen this myself. Swami Swahanandaji, some of you surely remember him. He was the previous head of this center. He left the body in 2012. I had the privilege of serving him sometimes here at Trabuco. In the first room down there, he would come for a couple of nights. And the other Swami, Harinamananda, I think you know him. We were 2 novices here at that time. And the night before he would retire, we had the opportunity to do a little personal service. We'd massage his feet and his legs. And sometimes he would be chatty, but often after a little talk, he would grow silent and he would lie back. He would read a few verses from a book of hymns, of devotional hymns. And then he would sit quietly and just relaxed, and we would be rubbing his feet. And I would always feel like we were the ones who were actually getting the benefit of getting our minds bathed in his holy presence. But I would see very often little tears in the outer corners of his eyes. And I didn't know what exactly to make of it, but I always felt that his mind was roaming in some kind of higher realms to which we didn't have access, but which we tasted a little through that peace that we got in his presence. So this is the prayer of Sri Chaitanya. When will that happen? When in taking thy name, when in taking thy name, the hairs of my body will stand on end in ecstasy, and the tears will spill down, and my throat stops working. I become unable even to speak. We saw this described in Sri Ramakrishna's life, when he would get so intoxicated that he wouldn't be able to sing or speak. He would just try to say the name of Krishna, and all he could say was like Kitta, Kitta, Kitta. He couldn't even pronounce the full name. And then he gives this beautiful image of complete and total surrender at the end of these 8 verses. The last verse, prostrate at thy feet, let me be in unwavering devotion. So it's a kind of prayer for unbroken devotion at the feet of the Lord. And this is the remarkable thing: neither imploring the embrace of thine arms, nor bewailing the withdrawal of thy presence, though it tears my soul asunder. So even if you don't reveal yourself to me, even if I don't see you, I'm going to hang on. I'm going to be here. I'm going to remain in constant devotion at your feet, just waiting. And I'm not going to insist, because that would somehow be too aggressive or something. I'm just going to be in humble surrender at your feet, waiting for your grace. O thou who stealest the hearts of thy devotees, do with me what thou wilt. For thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone. So I hope some of these images that we looked at more closely might be inspiring for you as they are for me. The mirror of the heart, the fire of desire getting extinguished, the lotus of the heart blossoming in the moonlight of the holy name, the ocean of bliss within that we taste at every step with every repetition of the name. That bath, the name as a beautiful, purifying bath. So as we chant the name of the Lord, may we come to that state where we can say, thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone.